Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first live stream this month. I am Sophie Sparks. I'm the community manager here at the Information Lab, and it's fantastic to have you join. Now, this is the first time we're trying to live stream to YouTube Live and LinkedIn Live at the same time, so we might have a few problems. So you might see me scurrying around and looking everywhere as I try and get some streams working. But the most important thing is I am here joined by my colleague and Tableau Iron Viz winner, Will Sutton. Now, Will is going to take us through how he has been using AI to help him build some recent visualizations. If you have any comments to Will, any questions you'd like to ask him, please drop them into the chat and I'll be answering them for you. And I'll be dropping some links for you to connect with Will on LinkedIn, Twitter, to check out his Tableau public profile and also to check out his really good videos on his YouTube channel in the comments below. So, Will,
Thank you very much,
take it
Sophie. That
away.
was lovely to hear. Okay, let me share my screen. Go for the slides. Yeah, is that coming through? Nice. Okay, yes, so I will. I've got a little project in mind, and it started off with this. So, Visual Capitalist, it is a well-known sort of data visualization provider. They were running a competition about building a mobile-optimized data viz on the focus of international trade. And what was important to me was the top prize was £2,000. It's like, yes, this is a chance. They're all struggling a bit more these days with cost of living, and I was like, okay, this has got my eye here. This is a competition. I want to try and win this as best I can. There were a few troubles I had though. Was I haven't really done much mobile work before. I like to build my nice wide desktop dashboards, that kind of visualization. I'm a bit out of touch with the mobile world. I've never worked with international trade data. I've never done anything with that before. And I only had a week left to enter the competition. So I was thinking, well, how am I going to do this? And as we've been talking, like AI is always out there. There's a lot of these tools, a lot of hype out there in the market about what it can do, how quickly it can do things. And I want to say, well, let's see what it can do. So I thought, let's try and enter this competition using AI to see, can I get myself that £2,000 prize? So with Visual Capitalist, they gave us some ideas of what type of mobile orientated sort of dashboards they like. These are the sort of things they produce. You can see sort of very heavy on the design. There's quite dramatic colors going on, quite different chart types is here as well. So it's like these IPOs, like the little bubbles here. You've got, this streaming wars, this sort of radial bar chart coming out here. This kind of land view as well, this sort of like diamonds or visualization, sort of 3D. This is not the sort of thing you build normally in Tableau, I tell you, and not without a lot of work. So I'm still keen. I'm just keen to see what the AI can do. So let's set about trying to enter this contest. So I started with ChatGPT, and I just posted the prompt. This was the first prompt I gave it was just said, hey, you're going to be entered in this competition. These are the rules. This is what we're trying to do. Can you go and find me out there some stories about international trade that I could bring into a visualization? So at the end here, I wanted to say, what have been some interesting trends over the time? These trends can be global, regional specific, country specific, but highlight any interesting stories and give us 5 examples to go and review there as well. And these are the themes that came back. So get back these 5 different themes. So first off, we're talking about this trend in global trade volume. They were saying, that maybe it's taken a sharp downturn because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and this might be quite an interesting story on that side. Shifts in major exporters, they highlighted the trade wars between China and the US. Also noting some news stories as well about how China becomes the world's top trade partner with the US, but now that's fading away. Changes in trade balances, it was talking about, again, that US-China trade war and saying how actually the US trade deficit was at its highest level in 14 years. commodity specific work. So it's talking about oil prices happening during the pandemic, what that impact of that was. And then lastly, this regional integration. So how have different trade between different countries changed over time? And it highlighted here things about Brexit. So these negotiations around the UK relationship with Europe. So I started going through all these different ideas, and I was asking him more questions on it, again, picking out some news articles as well that I could then go and follow up on it, to help me try and narrow down what I wanted to do. In the end, I actually decided, let's go and just give it a set of criteria that I was going to say would judge it to be a good story. So set out all these different criteria about, oh, is it true, like, what problems is this data going to solve? What positive outcomes are there from this data that we can see? Negative things can we see as well? And does this trigger any kind of emotion with my audience? A story is much more impactful if it's impactful to that audience member as well. So trying to make a very good story that would stand out from the rest of the competition. So I gave it all these different criteria and then asked it to score each of the topics by that criteria. And in the end, we came back with, yes, we love the commodity trade specifics. It had a lot of vibrant ideas that they could work with, things relative to people. Think about things like gemstones, things about things that are very relatable in day-to-day life, like food, for example. So really like the commodity specific, and I thought, okay, that's my story. That's where I'm going to start looking and diving into this data. Okay. So then it was getting it to work with data. So this was done before the days of the code interpreter on ChatGPT, but this was just me saying, could it go and make me a script to go and analyze this data for me? So I gave it the file name, I gave it, say, what the tab is, what the columns are. Could it try and create this exploratory analysis that would identify those commodity trends between the time period I have? And again, any anomalies in the data, like these things that stick out are kind of interesting to us, interesting as in they could be nice story points, or they could be potential issues with the data. So I've got to go and have a look at those. So yeah, it was really good. It able to then go and produce for me a little Python script. So here you can sort of see it's importing these different libraries, pandas to do manipulation on the Excel files, matplotlib and seaborn to visualize the data afterwards. And you can see some of it here reading in the Excel file, filtering between those different years, this sort of analysis, which was really, really useful. And what came back was these anomalies. So I'd asked it for anomalies and it gave me back two. So I asked it for like the statistical significance. So what things have changed beyond like a reasonable doubt of statistics. And it came back with these two. So fossil fuels and these pearls and gemstones. Okay. So notably saying that yes, the value. So how this data was working was you would have the value of the commodity that was being traded, but also the weight as well. So these were sort of the two metrics we were working with. What I could see was that for fossil fuels, yes, the value was lower and also the weight was lower too. Similarly with gemstones, the value was lower. The value of what was being imported was lower, but actually the weight was much higher than it previously was. And I wasn't really sure. I mean, I don't work with international trade data or anything to do with pearls and gemstones, so I really wasn't sure. So I just asked ChatGPT again. I go, okay, why has this happened? And so I would get these prompts coming back, giving me a few different ideas about this. So economical factors, production, slide change. That was also quite a few news articles it gave me as well. Political changes that might have influenced this. I couldn't fit on screen, but it was very helpful for me whenever I had a question about this to then go back to the tool and ask it. And indeed here, when I saw 2020, so personally I thought this is not going to be another COVID story, is it? And not, lo and behold, it is another COVID story. And I, personally, for me, I don't want to tell another COVID story. Having lived through it, I don't want to keep telling that story. So I moved on. I discounted this piece of analysis. Well, let's just move on with the piece of work itself. So it was then about me taking that data set and trying to find my own different like angle perspective on the data as well. So these came from two different ways. So I was working with the diamonds data set, and I got reminded by my song that diamonds are a girl's best friend. I also had this idea of when I was looking through the pearls data set about this conflict between old versus new. They had a split in there between natural pearls and cultured pearls. Again, topics that weren't normal to me, so I could ask ChatGPT again to explain what the difference between these were. Actually, turns out that the natural were the old-fashioned ways where they just found the oyster with the pearl naturally created inside of it. Your cultured pearl was where they had gone farmed this specifically. They had applied a process to your oyster that would then go and create a pearl in a very farmed, controlled condition. So this seemed to bring out this idea of like the old way of doing things, which is quite like you had to be very lucky to find these things and quite searching for quite a long time to get this, or the newer way where it's much more efficient, much more reliable business process. So this kind of generated this idea of a sort of new versus old conflict going on. With the diamonds, I kind of went down this route of trying to explore the diamonds. There's quite a lot being produced by, say, big countries like China would go and import lots of diamonds, export lots of diamonds. I wanted to play on this idea of diamonds are a girl's best friend. So thought, well, could we try and combine the amount that they're importing with the amount of the population, in particular just the female population? So just arbitrary to sort of stick with that title of diamonds are a girl's best friend. So I was then working out if you were to take that country's import of diamonds and divide it up for each woman in that country, how much would they get? It's just a sort of nice, relatable way of trying to understand the scale of how many diamonds are imported for particular countries. So that I was then asking it to try and describe how big this amount of diamonds would be. I mean, don't really hear about 300 carat diamond or anything like that, but it's like, how big is it? Is it like a kitchen sink, or is it a pint glass? How many diamonds are there? And that was based on some descriptions I've had in the past. When I remember them talking about gold, and they'd always describe it as the world's gold supply could fit in so many Olympic-sized swimming pools. So let's take that same concept and try and apply it to this commodity as well. So in the end, I sort of had these sort of two angles I was working on. This one about diamonds, and then one about the pearls as well. Okay. So then it was like I've got a much more focused idea on what I want to do. It's then about finding a design, some kind of design ideas to fit in with that mobile view. So I asked ChatGPT to create me some mid-journey prompts. Here we go. Just give me an infographic about the global pearl trade. So we come up with different prompt suggestions, and I put those into Mid-Journey, and this is what came back. Absolutely mad. I'll be honest. So, yeah, I was quite shocked. So you have a lot of world maps going on here, a lot of maps over here, a lot of international trade more playing on here. So you can sort of see the world maps and all the little lines between different trade countries. Also, this kind of global shipping kind of view here. So looks a bit boats down here, but there's just something else going on there. Some really old stuff, like really old ships. This made absolutely no sense to me in terms of what I was trying to get to with a visualization. Even ones here, they had an idea of like a string of pearls, and a dancer for some reason came up as well. This one came up about pearly gates. Yeah. So it's taking sort of these local sayings around pearls and then trying to put this into a prompt, and it was actually completely far from what we were trying to do in the first place. Um, okay, so I kind of stopped with Mid-Journey at that point. I figured I'm not going to be able to get too much further with this. So what I did was I went back to ChatGPT and just asked it, okay, looking to build a compelling, visually interesting data visualization suited for mobile. Topics of the Pearl Table, what charts would you recommend? This was came back, a bar chart, a line chart, pie or donut charts. Interesting, we got this chloropleth map, which is sort of a map, which is sort of a nice crossover between the two. But for me, these were the same. It didn't really feel like it was going to meet that criteria that we had from Visual Capitalist of those visualizations we saw. So I found this a really tough point of for it to do chart recommendations on this size, like that weren't the standard charts that we'd see each time. So yeah, I think back to these, I think, well, this is what we were trying to get to, but I couldn't find a way to get ChatGPT to or Midjourney to go and make this kind of visualization. So I had to go off and figure out my own idea for this. For this, I had been looking at a lot of work by Tristan Gullivan. So he'd been doing a lot more advanced techniques, advanced chart types in Tableau. I particularly like the network. I like the Vornai tree map sort of chart. And I wanted to try and make a sort of a union of the two, if you like, for my Perl viz. So this was going to be like using the network to be like your string of pearls, but then the individual circles to be the amount of pearls that are being imported, and then cut into between the amount that were cultured and the amount that were natural. So you'll see an image of it in a second, but I found using these two tools, I couldn't do it. So I then got ChatGPT to do the maths for me. So start off very basic. Can you find me the area of a circle? Okay, so if I've got my circle, let me go over here. I've got my circle and I want to cut it in two. How am I going to do that? And then could you go and give me that area? How I'm going to write this in Excel? So I then got it to print out those different points for me in Excel. So then I was able to build up this visualization like this, using this techniques to create this kind of effect. So you have a circle that's then cut in two in this way. And doing this, you could have them all in the same sort of angle of the cut, if you like. That was the issue I was having with those other two tools, was that I could generate the little Vornai bits, but I couldn't get them all to cut in the same way. So, okay, so I wasn't able to get generative AI to build a design I liked, but I was able to get it to plot me the points that I wanted to build the design I wanted. So, a little bit of a workaround there, but we got there. But otherwise, with design, super helpful in terms of what it can pick out for you. So these are just excerpts of some of the prompts I had. Colors, I just asked it for what good colors would work for pearls, and it gave me all of these hex codes. Similarly for fonts, I want a nice title case font that I will use in that visualization that will stand out and be easy to read. So all of these. And then the titles. So I had a bit of a play around with these and any ideas of any pearl puns. So it comes up with quite fun ones like pearls of wisdom clamming up. But lastly here was shell shocked. So that's where my title came from in the end, was that you had this sort of pearl-like pun going on here. And lastly, I didn't write off Midjourney completely, but it's quite useful for standard sort of background images. So in this case, I just asked it to get me an image of some diamonds. I was never going to be able to draw anything like this or find stock art like this, but I could use this. I could put that into my visualization later as well. So these were the two visualizations I came up with in the end. So one about pearls and one about diamonds. So here you can see that pearl, that string of pearls, and sort of the disparity between the natural pearls and the cultured pearls. So playing on that idea of like new versus old. to have them in separate corners of the visualization, color coordinated. So in terms of what was done, title was done, all this text was done by ChatGPT. The actual layout of the points was all done in ChatGPT. Cultured that text, the colors, ChatGPT. I just had to go and build all this in Tableau itself as well. And most of this is just done using images, background images and Figma. Similarly with the diamonds here, so I used that mid-journey prompt to get me that image of diamonds, and then I created an inverted bar chart just to show the diamond sections. So it looks like the diamond image is my bars in this case. And again, lots of elements of ChatGPT coming in here. So even this subtitle here, or this explanation, in 2020, the equivalent of 43 Olympic pools of diamonds were imported, but how much is that per woman worldwide? And then I would use again these ideas like 327 carats. It's about the size of a small plum of diamond for every woman in Belgium. So bit of a different visualization there, but it did help with these sort of notable objects, so I can make this much easier for someone to interpret, despite it being a bit of a complex metric I'm using there. Okay. And then I got to the shortlist, and I had a look, and I was like, oh, I didn't make the shortlist. I did. These are all great visualizations. I was like, oh, mine's not here. I wasn't too disheartened. I did manage to get Tableau's Visit of the Day, so I was happy with that. So, there's a win in there for that. But yeah, I looked over these visualizations, like, very different from what the AI was coming up with. You see a lot of these Sankey charts coming here, like 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-9 charts coming up there as well. We have some stack bars here and there, so it's not totally the wrong thing, but these were the charts that came out. But then I started sort of seeing behind this and thought, well, these were the stories that we had to start with, and then I could start seeing where these visualizations could have come from in terms of those stories. So, okay, so other people have chosen different stories, but I could have gone down any of these routes, depending on which story I wanted to do based on what the AI was recommending to me. So they again got me thinking about what process I was going through. So I had done this process of I used ChatGPT to go and find me a story about this commodity, then go and analyze the data, then go and find me some charts, and then that was it. Then I've got my visualization. But going through this, what I realized was there's a lot of bias, and a lot of bias coming from me. Is the machine wrong in this case, or am I doing the wrong thing here? So we made up that story, we scored it. I set the criteria for it to be scored. So in that case, I'm almost saying I want to do this kind of story, so adding my own bias. There was then that data analysis where we found, okay, there's a significant change because of COVID. I didn't want to do that, so we're going to do something else in that case. So again, that's a decision I've made that has impacted this work. And then from that, the charts, I mean, it recommended to me charts. I didn't want to do this based on what it recommended and want to do something else. So again, I've been biased all the way along and every sort of step of the way to get to the output. So the AI had helped me, but I've been the one sort of leading it to do the things that I wanted to do. So can I say that AI has failed here, or have I failed in this case? And I spoke around. So I started talking to people about visualization. So this is the conversation that I had is on my YouTube channel with Sebastian Graf, who won the competition with the Out of Africa visualization, about how he went about building this visualization to understand this process. And I've been having more of these conversations, and slowly I've realized that, well, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So I think typically we'd say you get given a data set, okay, go and analyze that, find the story, produce your charts, and you're good. But you could also take it another way. I found this other approach where It will say, this is a chart I want to make. I'm going to put it into this data, and then this story should emerge from it. Again, equally another way of doing it. So when going through all of this, it actually says that, well, maybe when I'm doing this, working with this AI, I've got to be quite conscious of the process I'm going down. And with AI, I mean, I could easily have done all three of these different processes to get to an end goal and seeing what it looks like. And that would be my next step. But yeah, so maybe reflect quite highly on like what my process is going to be. But I think for all of us, like takeaway is yes, AI tools did make me faster, did make me more creative and approach new problems. Like I had never done things on international trade. I didn't know differences between different types of pearls at all. More creative, yes, I built charts that I hadn't built before. I also managed to complete 2 dashboards in a week for a competition, which I was really pleased with. So it ticked all of these things. But there was one sort of takeaway that I reflect on quite a lot is that you still need to know what good looks like. You're still going to need to know when to stop, what your audience wants. So those inputs I've made have affected the model, but affected what the output was. But it's also understanding what that audience wants at the end of the day as well. So you can be given the perfect solution. It looks like it, but is it going to work for your scenario? Is it going to work for your audience? So that is it. That's what I got to with this little project, but there will certainly be more little generative AI projects I will have coming up in the future to explore this a bit further.
Thank you so much, Will. There was a lot of takeaways in that, and I loved the slide you used one or two beforehand, where you could start at any part of the visualization process from a design, and then trying to find data to fit that story around, or looking for a story, or you have some data and you need to explore it. So AI could help you in this one in any of those places. What was the before? What was sort of the biggest? Did you find this to be a hard learning curve to begin to write prompts and think about how you could use AI as part of your visualization process? Because as you can see here, you've used it in sort of every part.
Uh, yeah, I think when we start off with, I suppose, the AI, I always thought like it could just do it in one step, and it really that's not never becomes like a good way. So I started having to research a lot more myself about what would make for good prompting, and it came down to these concepts called like chain of thoughts, which is idea of where you sort of take your AI, in the case of ChatGPT, take it down several sort of small prompts to lead up to your solution. So for example, like when it was here, I'm starting off, hey, simple, like, can you tell me what the formula of a circle is? How would you divide this up? How can I make this as points? This kind of step-by-step process. I found this very helpful for it providing actually what I wanted to come back, as well as me being able to check that what it's doing is correct at the same point. There was definitely some like learning I did need to go around and sort of have a test around of what prompts would work well. I've certainly seen that with some of the recent work I've done with Midjourney as well. There is quite a lot of like reasonably free resource out there to help you experiment around about understanding what would work nicely with prompts. So, for example, things like ChatGPT will always want more information, or like this, several strings of messages. But things like Midjourney, actually, longer is not always better in some cases. Actually, wants quite a sort of smaller, short, succinct prompt to actually produce an image that's of good quality, that what you wanted. So um, yeah, there's definitely sort of playing around understanding these techniques, and this is where these projects come in so helpful of actually testing it, road testing it out to see where it all gets to.
Fantastic. So it sounds like it is uh, not a super steep learning curve. It's more like a tweaking. Everyone can speak English. Well, this is in English, so if you're not So everyone should be able to understand it. So you have the skills there to be able to write good prompts. It's more like just practicing and getting used to the different how to break out your thought process so a machine can understand it, and then maybe some of the nuances around different platforms. That is really cool. I just think if anyone has any questions for Will, please drop them into the chat. I've got a lot of questions for him, and I know this has been a lot to take in, so you might need to give yourself a few moments. But we wait for any more questions to drop in. Um, I'll ask you some more. So it looked like AI helped you in every step of the way from coming up with an idea through to designing ideas and then validating your end results. What one of those steps did you find using AI to be the most helpful for?
In this case, it was definitely about breaking into, say, what is international trade, what are the stories there. It's not something I pick up on, it's not something I look out for in the news here and there, or maybe this is very anecdotal things, but this is quite helpful for me just to get a context of what other things are going on out there. Like I may know one or two things, but this will give me back five different ideas in these cases, maybe more if I wanted it to, about what a good starting point could be. So it kind of refreshes your own mind of like what options are available to you, because I found that very helpful for breaking down certain terminologies as well. So like even with the pearls, I can just ask it what the difference between the two was, and it'd come back with quite a long explanation between the two, which is like perfect. I mean, this is like advanced like level Googling, but it's very responsive, very helpful. And then that could form part of the visualization because I know I'm asking all these questions of it. My audience is going to be asking the same, so I can take a lot of like the learnings from this, put it into that visualization to help everyone out.
That's really interesting because most of the time when you think about the visualization process, you don't necessarily think about what goes on beforehand. You
Yeah.
most people would start with, I have a data set, I need to clean it, I need to visualize it, and then if, I'll need to design it or format it. But you don't necessarily on the I need to understand the topic and understand what could be an interesting point of journalistic way to think. Where's it before you even have the data, and then ideas at the end. You sort of look uh, 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 and them about how
Yeah.
chat GPT helped you with those sort of ideas it had for a visualization, and in that way it's almost like helped you if you wanted to do some user testing. If this was, let's say, visualization you're going to roll out for not a competition, for users were going to be using it a lot, you could use chat GPT to help. It's already giving this whole list of different ways you could view this, and you could build like ABC on this visualization again. So those are maybe not places you would necessarily you need to spend time on building good visualization, but you do. We've got a
Yeah,
sorry, keep on going.
no, I was going to just follow up and say, yeah, if this was about take a data set, build the optimal charts for it, the AI would have already won. That's like would have been a determinative process of it all. You would have just said, oh, you've got so many data points. I'm going to show a scatter plot for this because there's a correlation. An AI would have been able to do that, but all that extra context of what's going on with the data, what's going on with your audience, all those factors are super important, and that's what you can use these tools to ask about, especially when, say, I'm not an expert on this, but I can get some good level knowledge from AI tools like this.
So it's kind of like having who you can bounce ideas off and who can also do all the research for you. Now we've got a
Yeah,
message in
and doesn't
from
get annoyed.
Prasad. And yeah. Um, with such drastic advancements in AI, what would you wish to see in the near future? My fiction is to be able to talk our questions directly into Tableau, and I'll visualize it directly.
Hmm. Um, Those are some good ideas. I mean, there's been a lot going on recently, like the code interpreter itself, where you can just upload a data set and it can do the visualization, the analysis for you is astounding. It's amazing. What more would I like? I definitely would like a bit more on, say, design side as well. I found there was like there's kind of a there's it would have been a really nice sort of sweet spot between the two of these. Like you have Midjourney, which is incredibly creative, and then ChatGPT, which gave me some incredibly straightforward charts. I wanted sort of something in between the two that could help out that initial like big picture idea of what you could make from the visualization. Uh, I mean, other than that, yeah, there is a lot more potential like we would like to see in the future in terms of yeah, some cool ideas of like, do you speak to Chat GBT and then it creates your Tableau workbook for you of your visualization would be pretty neat. And I'm sure that would be a nice idea sort of to come in the future. Mm,
And of
yeah,
course,
other
with
than that,
the AI features that Tableau announced at Tableau conference earlier on this year, they are moving towards that where you can uh, talk your way through a visualization and it will be created for you.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Will. We've gone a little bit over time, but that was a fantastic presentation. If anyone has any other questions for you, I have dropped into the comments all the ways you can connect with Will. He's on LinkedIn, he's on Twitter, he is also on YouTube, and he has lots of really great videos, including, and I've linked the talk you had with the gentleman who won, won this contest. So I've linked that in the to go check that out. So thank you so much, Will. And anybody, if you have any other topics you'd like us to cover, them into the chat. Let us know. We're looking for ideas of what kind of content you'd like to hear from us coming up. Everyone who's joining in, depending where in the world you're watching from, I hope a good evening or a good afternoon as it is from us. Perfect. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. No worries.